Hello, welcome. My name is Jonathan, and this is a level 1 practice that focuses on dome hands in the Bowspring system. Dome hands is when your fingertips touch the floor, not necessarily your finger pads, but the very fingertips, right where the nails are. So if you tapped your fingers down on hard wood, you'd hear a little clicking sound. What's different about dome hands is that the fingers curl, so there's no hyperextension, even in the thumb. So because of that, the fingers are fairly close into each other. And dome hands isn't meant to be a weight-bearing position where you put all of your weight on fingertips. The fingertips are actually there to be very sensitive, to feel more, and to be able to push and lift away from the floor or wall or wherever you may use dome hands. So please, let's begin seated. If you have a block, it's useful to sit up on to give yourself some more height. And sit in hero's position with your knees forward and your feet to the side of the block. Then reach your hands in front of you and touch your fingertips to the very end of your thighs, near your knees. And place your hands in dome hands position. So curl your fingers and touch your fingernails to your thigh. Then close your eyes and with your fingertips touching your thighs, feel more deeply. Notice if you can feel any pulse, whether that's in a particular finger or your thigh. And begin to press downward. And the downward press is meant to create a rooting to ultimately create a rise. So as you push down, lift your armpits higher. Allow your rib cage to get broader and fuller. Then on your next inhale, float your arms forward in front of you. You may have to open your eyes briefly, bend your elbows, and touch two dome hands together to create globe hands. So the fingers curl, and when your fingers curl, it gives you more advantage to tone your arms circumferentially. So there's an even tone on all sides. And with the fingers curl, intertwine your fingernails. Just know if you have very long fingernails, dome hands is quite difficult. Push your fingertips into each other and push your hands forward. Lift your outer elbows up and swell into your upper back. Let this practice be one that enables more sensitivity, a deeper level of mindfulness in your practice. So you move from a place of information and knowledge to wisdom and experience. On your next inhale, please open your eyes and make your way into all fours position, hands and knees. Here in all fours position, separate your hands as wide as your mat. Bring your shoulders over your wrists and separate your knees as wide as your hips and position your hips over your knees. Point your toes and push your toenails down into the floor until the front of your ankles lift up. Then move your hips back slightly and push your knees out to the side to put more weight into your legs and to lift your glute muscles up. Then push your arms straight and lift your rib cage higher away from the floor while the belly remains soft and moving downward. Then lean to your right hand and dome your left hand. Curl your fingers, bring your fingers close to each other and touch the very tips of your fingernails. Push your arm all the way to straight and use that to lift your rib cage higher away from the floor. So there's a lightness. The left hand isn't meant to weight bear, but it's something to push out into to make the rib cage lighter and to put more weight into the legs. Then go from dome to bright hand with your left and switch. Weight your left hand, lean over and dome your right hand. As you dome the right hand, push down with the fingertips to lift the rib cage up. As the hips move back, pull your right dome hand towards your knees and use that to move your rib cage more forward. Then go from dome to bright with your right hand. Move the hips back And as your hips move back, try to come into dome hands both, so left and right. So it's almost a hybrid between a kneeling position. As the hips move back, push your knees out, lift your glutes up. And here, even in dome hands with both hands, you could lift one hand away from the floor and then another hand away from the floor. Go from dome to bright, then tuck your toes, keep the lift of your hips, and rise up into crouching cat position. Bring your chin in line with your wrists and separate your feet as wide as your mat. Bend your knees and move your hips back and up. Push your arms straight. As you push your arms straight, make the rib cage light so it's not heavy and dense. Dome hands is almost impossible if the chest is sinking towards the floor. So push with your arms, make your rib cage light, allow your shoulder blades to broaden, and then weight your right hand, dome your left hand. As you dome the left hand, push your knees forward, move your hips up. Pull the hand back towards your feet and move your rib cage more forward. Allow your belly to get long and strengthen it, tone it in that long position. Lower your left hand bright, lean to the left, and dome your right hand. Move your hips back. Pull the right dome towards the legs. Make the rib cage light. Allow yourself to bounce, to pulse a few times, to find that lightness, that springy action. Then bright your right hand, and from here, start to walk your fingertips back. So walking the hands back towards the feet, lower your heels, and then with your feet as wide as your mat, dome both hands in a standing forward fold position. In this position, bend your knees, sink your hips low, and try to get the shoulders as high as the hips, if not even higher. Push your knees out, pull the rib cage long, then lean towards the right side, place your left hand to your left knee, push your arms straight, and use that to lift your right hand to your right knee. Wide-legged recovery position. Then just step your feet towards each other, hip width apart, and come up into a more active recovery position where it's dome hands to the middle of the thighs. Close your eyes and feel more deeply. With your fingertips touching the center of your thighs, can you feel your pulse? Can you feel your heartbeat? Even a simple practice done mindfully can be intense, can get the body engaged and the heart rate quickening. Reach your arms straight forward in front of you and curl your fingers. Notice when you curl your fingers, you can tone your arms more evenly. As an example, just spread the fingers on one hand, even hyperextend those fingers, and keep your other hand curled. And just notice which hand is it easier to strengthen. Which one would you have more confidence holding on to something? Go back to that curled position, then bend your elbows and touch your two hands together, globe hands position. And globe hands is ultimately just two domes touching together. Push your fingertips into each other, weight your left foot, and then take a little step forward with the right foot into a lunge position. With this short lunge position, move your hips back, push the fingertips into each other, and broaden and lift through your rib cage. Use the pressing in of the fingertips to widen and expand in your upper back. Turn your knees in and move your groins down and back, then push your knees out and lift your glutes up. Then as you press your fingertips into each other, lunge twist, twist from left to right. Keep the rib cage more vertical. Gaze in the direction of the center of your chest. Push the fingers into each other and pull down energetically with your hands as your outer elbows lift up. Then turn back to center, lean into your right foot, lift your left heel, Push the left foot forward to spring your hips further back. Then pull your left foot back as you lift the leg into the air. Propeller position. Arc forward slightly, and as you push your fingers into each other, broaden through your upper back. Push your left knee forward, keep your hips moving back, then slow and steady, step your left foot forward, come into a lunge position, second side. In the lunge position, have your feet separated hip width distance apart, turn your knees in. As you turn the knees in, push both feet forward and move both hips further back. As the hips move back, embrace the curvature in your low back, but create it through the strength of your legs. Push your knees out to the sides, lift your glutes up, and with your hands more at the height of your navel, push your arms forward, lift your outer elbows up, fill into the space between your shoulder blades. Then twist over towards the left. As you twist to the left, keep your hips moving back and lift up through the top of your head. So there's a lightness, a sense of floating. And turn back to center. Push off your left foot and rise up. With the right foot lifted, bend both knees, and with both knees bent, tilt forward slightly. Pull your right knee forward and move your hips further back. As you do that, fill into your upper back and use the push of your fingertips to engage your arms. So even though this posture is challenging the left leg, the standing leg, recruit your arms to strengthen just as much. Then step your right foot back and proceed to a wall. So find a blank space that you're able to touch your fingertips to, about shoulder width distance apart and as high as your shoulders. And it's very common when you touch fingertips to the wall to touch with your finger pads. So curl your fingers close to each other and touch with your fingernails. Imagine that teacher in elementary school who slid their fingernails down the chalkboard. That's the same action, just if that irritates you, don't actually do it. Separate your feet hip width apart and bend your knees forward and move your hips further back. Come into a crouching cat position, but at the wall. Push the fingertips into the wall and use that to move your rib cage further back. So the point of dome hands isn't to weight bear, but to actually move away from that position. Then turn your feet to the left, heels to the right, and come into twisted cat at the wall. Bright your right hand and turn the hand out so your thumb points up. Tilt your right ear towards your right shoulder. Turn your knees in and send your hips back. And as you arc to the right, push the left fingertips into the wall and pull the hand down. Use that to lift the left side of your rib cage higher up away from the floor. On an inhale, come back up, dome your right hand, pivot on your heels, turn your feet to the right, heels to the left, bright your left hand, point your thumb up into the air. Then with your right hand and dome hand, tilt your left ear towards your left shoulder, turn your knees in, send your hips back. Pull down with the right hand and lift the right side rib cage higher away from the floor. You're always welcome to pulse a little bit, to find a lightness, to find a fluidity, an ease, a motion. Then bright your right hand, pivot your heels, then push both hands into dome hands. Keep your rib cage broad, bring your heels to the floor. Weight your left foot, step your right foot slightly forward. Push the foot forward in a dig action, pushing forward and down, and then drag the foot back and up to lift your right leg into the air. Cross your ankle over your knee, cross ankle squat. Keep the right hand in dome hand position and cup the back of your head, left hand. Point your left elbow straight forward into the wall. Push your head back into your hand. Be an arm distance away from the wall, and as you push the right fingertips into the wall, pull the hand down, lift the rib cage up, lift the elbow up, lift the top of your head up, and release. Touch your right foot down and left fingertips to the wall. Switch sides. Step your left foot slightly forward. Dig the foot forward and down. Move your hips back. Drag the foot back and up. Engage the back of your leg and your glute. Then place the left ankle over your right knee and cup the back of your head with your right hand. Point your elbow forward. Press your head back. Pull down with the left hand. Lift your rib cage up. Even pulse a little bit. Up and down. Up and down. Pushing with the left dome hand to keep the rib cage away from the wall, and pulling down to get a lift, a lightness. Using an inhale to lift the ribs and an exhale to drop the hips. Touch your right fingertips back. Bring your left foot down. Then turn back. Come onto your mat. Take a wide stance and place both hands to your knees. With both hands on the knees, turn the knees in and send the hips far back. Then reach your right arm long. Touch dome hands. Then reach the left arm long. Touch dome hands. Transition into all fours. Brighten the left hand. Then brighten the right hand. Step one foot back, come onto your knee, and then the other foot. All fours position. Move the knees slightly further back, and then move the hips back a little bit behind the knees. Tuck the toes under, push with the hands, and lift up, crouching cat position. Here in crouching cat position, turn your heels to the right so your feet turn to the left. Twisted cat, left position. Lower your right ear towards your right shoulder, then dome your left hand. Stay in dome hand to begin with. Draw your knees in, send your hips back, then push forward with the left hand. Get a solid side body stretch just underneath your left armpit, that place that's so vulnerable to being tickled. Then option to lift the arm, curl the fingers all the way to seed hand, and reach your arm long. Then lower, dome to bright, lift your heels, and pivot your heels the other way. So twisted cat right, heels drop to the left. Dome your right hand. Send the hips back. Take your left ear towards your left shoulder. Lift your rib cage up. Push the right arm long. Stretch through the side body. Then option to lift your hand. Curl the fingers in. Place your thumb over top the second knuckle of your index finger. And reach and extend out. Make the arm toned. Pulse the legs. Then lower, dome to bright. Keep the rib cage lifted, but lower your knees to the floor. Point your toes, all fours position. Side all fours. Move the hips back, but now walk the hands over to the left. As you move the hands over to the left, dome your right hand, tack your right hip back, tilt your left ear towards your left shoulder, and with your right hand in dome hand position, lift the right armpit higher, move the inner bicep up, broaden through your upper back, and push out through the right fingertips. Move your rib cage more forward as the hips go back. Then walk your hands over to the other side, hands going to the right, dome your left hand. Tack the hips back, push your knees out, lift the glutes, right ear to right shoulder, push down with the fingertips. Lift the armpit up, broaden through the upper back. Pulse forward and back as you stretch and reach out. And then turn back to center, plant your hands, crouching cat position. Transitioning to diagonal starter block position, step your left foot halfway forward to your left hand, but at the very edge of your mat. Then step your right foot just a little bit forward and on the right edge of the mat. Then pivot your feet towards the left, walk the hands over to that left foot, and rise up, place both hands to your knees. So it's just lunge position, but in a diagonal shape. So diagonal starter block position, like you're ready to run a race. Here in this position, use it as transition to come into baby mantis. Push your arms straight, lift your back foot, point your toes, and bring your shin to the floor. Then arc over to the right and place your right hand to the floor at the very front corner of your mat. Cup the back of your head with your left hand and hug your elbow in. Tilt your ear towards your shoulder. Push your left foot forward to move your hips further back towards the right heel. And then as the hips move further back and you arc over, see if you can dome your right hand. So it's not weight bearing. It's actually great for the wrists because there's no weight at all. Could even get to a point where the right hand lifts away from the floor. So there's a lightness, a springy quality. Then turn to the floor, both hands bright, step back, crouching cat position. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Then switch sides. Step your right foot halfway to your right hand at the edge of your mat. Then step your left foot just a little bit forward and to the left edge. Then rise up into that diagonal starter block position. Hands and dome hands on the knees. Be sensitive. Feel more. Fingertips is one of the most sensitive areas of the body. Right up with the tongue. Push your knees forward, move your hips back. At this point in time, I don't know of any tongue stand yoga poses. Reach your arms forward, then weight your right foot, lift your left foot, point your toes and come down onto your shin. Reach the left arm over as you arc to the left. Place your hand bright and cup the back of your head. Hug your elbow in. Push your head back into your hand. Send your hips back. Turn the knees in to encourage the hips back. Then push your knees out. Lift your glutes. With the glutes engaged, dome your left hand and arc over all the way. As you arc, pulse slightly up and down. Option to even lift the hand momentarily. So it's all in the legs. There's a power, especially in the back of the legs, the hamstrings, the calf muscles, the glutes. Then bright your left hand, bright your right hand, and step back into all fours position. Tuck your toes under for seated side twist. Lift your knees and turn your knees to the left. Bring your right hip to the floor. Then just extend your right hand a little bit forward in front of you and dome your left hand. With your left hand in dome position, use that to lift the rib cage up as you tilt your right ear towards your right shoulder and lift the left side rib cage higher away from the floor. Then transition from seated side twist into side bow. Extend your right arm long, lead with the top of your head and your right ear. Come to lie on your side body, but keep the side waist and the side ribs lifted. Then lift your left leg to hover and dome your left hand straight in front of you. With your left hand in dome hand position, pull the hand towards the foot side of your mat and use that to move your left shoulder closer towards your ear. But make the movement of your shoulder towards your ear be an action of the rib cage getting lighter, of lifting, as opposed to just lifting your arm and your shoulder higher up. Then place your left hand back to the mat, push down, lift back up into seated side twist, push with both hands, Come back all fours. Pause, take a deep breath in, deep breath out. Then dome your right hand and tilt your left ear towards your left shoulder. Move your hips back, then lift your feet and pivot your feet over to the left. Side body stretch, right side. Tilt over to the left more. Push down with the right fingertips and dome. Lift your rib cage. Pull the hand back to your knees. Move the rib cage forward. Pivot your feet back to center. Bright your right hand. Then dome your left hand and tilt your ear to your shoulder. Push the fingertips down. Lift your rib cage. Lift your feet to hover. Pivot the feet over towards the right. As you do so, arc, arc, stretch your side body. I like my sticky mat that I have because it's great at gripping my hands and bright. But when I pivot on my knees with this sticky mat, I lose about 50 leg hairs every single time. So I do my best not to scream for you. Come all the way back, then lower your feet, dome or go bright left hand, tuck your toes, lift your knees, and turn your knees to the right, left hip to the floor. Seated side twist. Just move the left hand a little bit forward and dome your right hand so the rib cage is more upright. And pause. Move your hips back. Make the left hip heavy. Then tilt the left ear to your shoulder. From here, slide your left arm long. As you slide the left arm long, reach the right hand in front of you, arms straight, and dome your right hand. Lift your right leg to hover, and push your knee forward to move your hips back. Even turn the knee in to broaden and widen your sit bone higher up into the air. Then reach both arms in front of you, tilt your head back, roll onto your back without using your elbows, and just wiggle your way back to the center position of your mat. With your arms overhead, push your arms straight, broaden through the upper back, and lift your hips momentarily and move your glutes back towards your upper back so your low back is lifted away from the floor and the pubic bone is lower than the height of the belly button. Then turn your palms to the front of your mat, bend your elbows and come into chin-up bar position. Move your feet closer to your hips, then lift your hips up into bridge pose. Classic bridge pose is just thrusting the hips high up into the air. Bowspring bridge is actually dropping the hips lower down and letting the belly get full, the belly get long, and as the hips lower down, strengthen and tone your belly. Imagine actually holding a chin-up bar and pulling your rib cage towards the front of your mat as your hips drop lower and lower and lower. The most advanced version in bridge pose is having your hips just hovering so you're still weight bearing in the legs, belly is lifted, and the hips are just a millimeter from the floor. Then lower the hips all the way down, lift both feet. Keep your hands in chin-up bar position in the dome hands and lower your legs halfway over towards the right. Point your elbows up and keep your gaze straight up. Broaden through your upper back and imagine pulling down with your heels and pushing forward with your toes so your legs stay strong and engaged. Inhale and come back up and go over to the other side. Legs go to the left. Gaze, elbows stay straight up. So it's passive. It's not as deep as some twists, but it's not passive in the sense of the activity that's required, the engagement and the tone, and ultimately the attention. To pay attention while you feel even more is difficult, because when you feel more, you may feel things that you don't want to feel. Come all the way back up. Place your hands to your knees. And close your eyes. Freedom position. At the end of every practice, there's a time to assimilate, a time to pause, to remember, and to feel the experience, to be open to the experience in whatever comes up, the challenges, the triumphs. Release your legs, slide your legs long, assimilation. Bring your arms alongside you. Turn your palms face down and curl your fingers. With your palms face down, notice that it gives you an advantage to broaden through your upper back. And as you lie here, feel your breath rise and fall like the waves of an ocean, moving in and moving out. Please spend several more minutes lying here with your own breath.